Welcome back to Harble. The fact that President Trump is now accused of knowing in advance about that infamous 2016 Trump Tower meeting between his son Donald Jr. and a Russian lawyer isn't stopping Trump from continuing his bromance, if you will, with Vladimir Putin. The two leaders are now jockeying to host their next face-to-face meeting. Speaking in South Africa today, Putin said he's ready to invite Trump to Moscow. He's ready to visit Washington if the conditions are right, he said. In a statement, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said President Trump looks forward to having President Putin to Washington after the first of the year, and he's open to visiting Moscow upon receiving a formal invitation. You'll remember that last week President Trump invited Putin to Washington this fall, but that invitation was put off. National Security Advisor John Bolton explained the delay, saying the next bilateral meeting with President Putin should take place after the Russia witch hunt is over. That's his word. So we agreed that it will be after the first of the year. For more, I'm joined by Mieke, Vice President for the National Security Program at the Third Way, and Ken Delaney, National Security and Intelligence Reporter for NBC News. There's something off-putting about the fact of our president being so willing to accept the beckoning call, the siren song or whatever, of Vladimir Putin. He says, come on over, and Trump says, well, I could come over there. But isn't he still pending an invitation from this president? Isn't he still supposed to say, yes, I'll come to Washington first before he starts going off and inviting him over there? There's no sense of respect from that little guy to that American president, from what I can see. Ken?
Chris,
he's dissing him over and over again, and he gets away with it.
Yeah, Democrats use words like submissive and supine to describe Trump's approach to Putin. But look, leaving all that aside, Vladimir Putin seized Crimea in violation of international law. The last time that happened, Saddam Hussein seized Kuwait. The international community went to war to oust him. Now, obviously, we can't go to war against Russia, but this is hanging over the relationship, or should be. Secondly, Donald Trump has been briefed on detailed intelligence showing that Vladimir Putin supervised the election interference operation, an attack on our democracy. He has never called Putin out on that. Now he's going to meet with him and have a lovey-dovey summit either in Washington or Moscow. Neither seems appropriate. I can't imagine either George W. Bush or Barack Obama taking this course, Chris.
What do they want, Mieke? Start with Putin. What's he want? Why does he want to be in the embrace or in the company of our president?
Well, it's very clear that when he sits down with the president, he gives him his talking points, because when they stand out there together afterwards, it's Trump who's saying the Russian talking points. He was saying the Russian talking points.
He's scripting Trump.
He's scripting Trump on Montenegro. He's scripting Trump on the relationship with Europe. He's scripting Trump on the U.S. exercises with NATO. It's very disturbing that when the president stands next to Putin, he doesn't seem to remember what the American national security priorities are.
That's a good point, Ken. Why would an American president, left, right, or center, and I don't know where Trump is actually, why would they take this side of the argument? Well, suppose little Montenegro, which is nowhere near the Russian border, would get into a fight with the Russians because they wanted to be too aggressive, and therefore we couldn't exercise or respond to Article 5, which we go to the rescue of any member of NATO. Why would he take a wacko argument that when Russians would be pushed, that somehow little Montenegro is threatening us more than Russia is? Why would he do this? I'm sorry, it's a rhetorical question. I know because Trump is working, he seems to be working for the Russians. That's why I got your thoughts.
We don't have proof of that, Chris, but I know of no rational explanation for this course of foreign policy. I mean, Trump is a guy who's willing to get in fights with Canada, right? He wants to be tough with other countries. He's getting tough on trade. A lot of his supporters are glad about that, but why won't he be tough with Russia? It's inexplicable unless you take into account the theory that he is somehow enthralled to Vladimir Putin. Again, no evidence for that has surfaced other than the 82 contacts between the Trump campaign and Russians, many of which are unexplained.
Well, Russia's not a great power. I noticed they're meeting in Johannesburg with the other middle-level powers, right, the BRICS. They're a gas station with an army. That's what they are. And I just wonder why we treat them as not only equals. Trump treats them like the other great superpower. Well, that's about 30 years out of date.
Right. Well, it seems like Trump is stuck in the 80s on a lot of things, including his view of Russia. Now, remember, after Reagan and after the fall of the Cold War, Russia really deteriorated in power. Yes, they have a nuclear arsenal, which makes them formidable, and we have to deal with them, but they wouldn't even qualify to be back in the G8 based on the size of their economy, which Trump is asking them to do.
Well, Ken, you reported that according to current and former officials, quote, 19 months into his presidency, there is no coherent Trump administration strategy to combat foreign election interference and no single person or agency in charge. Well, today, President Trump convened a meeting of the National Security Council devoted to election meddling. Well, late today, the White House released a statement on the meeting, writing, "The president has made it clear that his administration will not tolerate foreign interference in our elections." Well, he does. He is, and he was doing it. He was tolerating. He won't even admit it happened. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and Chris, the statement also said that as soon as he took office, he put in motion a strategy to combat foreign election interference. I've talked to a lot of current and former officials. I can't find anyone who's ever seen this strategy or knows what it says, but I've talked to a lot of people who are pretty sure it doesn't exist. And as you said, we reported today that even his own cabinet officials have been saying in Aspen and other places that, look, they're trying to do some things that they can do, DHS, the FBI, to combat foreign election interference, but they really need a whole-of-government strategy, some presidential leadership that would unite the government, because some of these problems are really hard, Chris. Russian interference on Twitter and Facebook, there's First Amendment issues there. The government is not well equipped to tackle that problem. The only prayer we have of solving it is through presidential leadership, and we're not seeing any of that from Donald Trump right now.
Well, Trump's meeting with his National Security Council today comes just days after he tweeted he was, quote, very concerned that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election. Based on the fact that no president has been tougher on Russia than me, that's Trump talking, they will be pushing very hard for the Democrats. But new reporting for the Daily Beast contradicts that. According to their forensic analysis, Russian hackers right now have targeted Missouri Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill as she began her 2018 re-election campaign in earnest. The report notes that hackers went after McCaskill last August at the same time Trump was publicly targeting her on her home turf out there in Missouri. Let's listen.